thank you very much, Mr. Shilowa, for speaking to us here on Newslink. Your initial reaction to the decision to suspend even the president of the union? I mean, it's a very new trade union, even though you look at the fact that some of the office bearers and the executive is people who have been in the field for long. It is fairly new for it to already have such problems. Am I right?
Indeed. Good morning. I think that what I thought Saftu will itself have learned from what happened when it was in COSATU is that you don't solve political problems through disciplinary action, which is why it was surprising that the national office bearers would have taken the decision to suspend Zweli, and I see now the NEC has in return also suspended the 4, instead of really sitting down, finding out if they think that the allegations are baseless. If the president of the federation has himself had to apologize, it would have been better to understand what are the real issues, solve those issues, rather than through suspension and keeping what may now be termed as opponents outside of the federation.
I think some of the questions that my colleague Slindelo Masigane actually asked are quite important. They are downplaying it at the moment, saying that they don't think that there'll be splinter groups from Saftu regarding this. But what is your thought? Do you think that that's a possibility?
It's always a possibility, but I don't think so. Because if you look at the numbers, obviously in terms of paid up members, NUMSA would be having more numbers, and that's where 1 or 2 of the office bearers come from. But if you look in terms of specific and different affiliates, they would be in a majority. That's why they could effect the suspension. So it's a possibility, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think what is likely to happen is that the Congress, which is due in a few weeks' time, is just going to be a difficult one to manage, because instead of looking at the challenges that workers face, retrenchments, high unemployment, public transport going high, it's going to be now spending a lot of time worrying about internal political battles.
Exactly. I was actually going to say this now creates factionalisms that have now shown to be playing out to the public, and it'll probably make the National Congress quite difficult. But let's talk about Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi himself. Does this exonerate him at all? But also at the same time, he has had, during the time when he was COSATU president, people who allegedly were going after him. We found out a bit later on. Doesn't this also just continue to weigh down his reputation?
Of course it does weigh down his reputation. But I think what would need to be looked at is whether or not these allegations are themselves true. And I hope that even though they've taken a decision to suspend these office bearers, even though they say that the financial committee says it is not aware of those, I'm hoping that further investigations will be done so that by the time they go to the Congress, he is not under any cloud, and that it is not said that by suspending the 4 office bearers, the idea is to try and sweep what has happened there under the carpet.
Do you agree with their notion that the national office bearers brought Saftu into disrepute? Do you agree with the decision to suspend them with immediate effect?
Well, I would agree that to an extent that the Constitution says they don't have powers to suspend, it would be seen as bringing the Federation into disrepute. But I would have preferred a situation where all they do is to reverse the suspension that was going to happen on Zweli and keep the rest, because the Congress is not too far. And by them taking a decision to suspend the 4, when there's really no charges that are going to be put against them, it just simply come across as trying to deal with opponents of the GS rather than dealing with the real issues on the ground.
All right. Thank you very much for your time here on Newslink. That is former Member of Parliament and former Premier of Gauteng, Mr. Mbazima Shilowa, speaking to us there in reaction to that press briefing.